They warned he was a lost cause, a ticking time bomb of a dog returned 3 times for his aggressive stillness. They said he would never bond with a child who lived in her own silent world. They were about to be proven wrong. The wall of sound hit them first, a tidal wave of frantic yapping, desperate whining, and deep concussive barks that vibrated through the concrete floor and up Sarah's spine. The air was thick with the scent of disinfectant and animal musk, a chemical sharpness that failed to mask the underlying odor of anxiety. Her daughter, Maya, flinched as if struck. Her small hands flew to her ears, her body curling inward. A silent retreat from the sensory assault. David placed a steadying hand on Sarah's shoulder, his expression a familiar mix of hope and pragmatism. "Maybe we should try the cat section first." Sarah shook her head, her eyes fixed on Maya. "We promised her, let's just walk the row." One time, they moved like ghosts down the aisle, a small, quiet family adrift in a sea of clamor. Paws scraped against metal doors, noses pushed through steel bars. A dozen hopeful dogs leaped and spun, their eyes pleading for a glance, a word, a chance. Maya saw none of them. She kept her gaze locked on the scuffed floor, navigating the chaos by feel alone, a small ship in a hurricane. With each passing kennel, another piece of Sarah's hope chipped away and fell to the floor. The therapist had said a dog could be a bridge, a steady, non-verbal companion to anchor Maya in a world that was too loud and too fast. But this place, this bedlam, was a fortress, not a bridge. They reached the end of the long corridor, where the barking faded to a low hum. But the last kennel was larger than the others and set back in the shadows, almost an afterthought. The sign on its door was stark, the words, "Experienced handler recommended," written in fading marker. Maya stopped, her hands slowly lowered from her ears. Inside, a dog sat with the stillness of a mountain. He was massive, a hulking creature of brindle and shadow, his broad head low. A network of faint white scars mapped his muzzle, testament to a history no one here knew. He wasn't sleeping. His amber eyes were open, watching, but not with the frantic energy of the others. He was simply present, a solid, unmoving point in a spinning world. He did not bark. He did not whine. He did not stir as they approached. "That's Brutus." The voice made Sarah jump. A man in a blue polo shirt with the shelter's logo embroidered on it stood behind him. Oh, he had a kind face, but his eyes were weary. This was Kevin, the shelter manager she'd spoken to on the phone. "He's big," David said, stating the obvious. "He's that and more," Kevin replied, his tone gentle but firm. "Folks, I wouldn't recommend this one for a family, especially with a child." He lowered his voice. "He's a 3-time return. The first family said he was too stubborn, wouldn't listen. The second said he was unresponsive, completely shut down. The last one just brought him back with a note that said, 'Broken.'" Sarah looked from the manager to the dog. Broken. The word hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Brutus hadn't moved a muscle. While Kevin spoke, the dog's massive head remained still, but his ear twitched, a barely perceptible motion, tracking the distant rumble of a truck downshifting on the highway outside. A sound Sarah had completely tuned out. "He doesn't seem aggressive," she offered quietly. "That's the thing," Kevin said, sighing. "He's not anything. He just is. He eats, he sleeps, he exists. He doesn't connect. We've tried everything. He's unadoptable, really. We just keep him because, well, where else is he going to go?" While they spoke, Maya had moved. So silently that none of them had noticed, she had slipped away and now sat cross-legged on the cold floor, just inches from the wire mesh door. The great scarred dog and the small silent child stared at each other. There was no sound, no movement. It was a communion of stillness, a shared language of silence that the noisy world couldn't understand. Then, with a slow, deliberate grace, Maya reached out. Her tiny fingers pressed against the diamond-shaped holes in the metal. Her palm flat against the cage. Brutus blinked. Once. He leaned forward a fraction of an inch, his wet nose gently touching the mesh directly opposite her hand. It was the first choice Maya had made all day. The first clear signal that she saw something here. Not just something she could tolerate, but something she wanted. "Sarah, no," David whispered, his voice taut with concern. "Did you hear what he said? Broken." But Sarah saw the look on her daughter's face. The tense lines around her mouth had softened. The frantic, hunted look in her eyes had been replaced by a quiet calm. For the first time since they had arrived, Maya looked anchored. She looked safe. She looked at Kevin, her decision hardening into resolve. Well, take him. The drive home was a silent affair. Brutus lay on a thick blanket in the back of the SUV, a colossal and breathing statue. He didn't pant or pace or look out the window. He simply lay there, his presence filling the vehicle, heavier than his physical weight. In the rearview mirror, Sarah could see Maya's reflection. She wasn't looking at the passing scenery. Her eyes were fixed on the stoic dog, a quiet understanding passing between the two souls the world had deemed unreachable. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, the shelter manager's warnings echoing in her head. She had followed her daughter's lead into the unknown, bringing home the dog no one else wanted, the dog everyone said was a lost cause. She prayed it was the right decision. The days that followed settled into a rhythm of profound quiet. Brutus was not a dog in the way Sarah had ever understood the word. He did not fetch or bark at the mailman, or greet them at the door with a wagging tail. He was a presence, a silent guardian who seemed to map the house with his body, always positioning himself between Maya and any door or window. He would lie on the cool tile of the kitchen while she ate, a brindle mountain at the foot of her chair. He would station himself at the bottom of the stairs while she slept, a shadow watching over shadows. His affection was a thing of proximity, not action, and the silence began to weigh on Sarah. "He just watches," she said to David one evening, staring at the huge dog who lay inert on the living room rug. "He doesn't play. He doesn't even seem to like being petted. Did we bring home a dog or a 150-pound security blanket?" "Maya is calm," David reasoned, though his own doubt was a faint line on his brow. "That's what we wanted, right?" "I know. But Kevin said he was broken. What if he is?" The fear was a cold knot in her stomach. What if they had simply exchanged one form of disconnection for another? The answer came on a Tuesday afternoon. The day had started bright and humid, but by 3 o'clock, a strange transformation had occurred. The cheerful chirping of sparrows and finches ceased, plunging the neighborhood into an unnatural hush. A sickly, greenish-yellow light filtered through the windows, painting the walls in bizarre colors. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down with a tangible weight, making it hard to breathe. Maya, who had been quietly arranging her blocks, began to rock back and forth. A low, distressed hum vibrated in her chest. Her agitation was a barometer for the unseen storm in the atmosphere, and Sarah's own anxiety began to spike in response. Then Brutus moved. He rose from his spot by the fireplace, not with a lazy stretch, but with the fluid, coiled power of a predator. Every muscle in his massive frame was taut. His head was raised. His scarred muzzle pointed toward the ceiling as he tasted the air. Sarah remembered the way his ear had twitched at the shelter, isolating a single sound in a sea of noise. He was doing it again, sensing something far beyond their perception. A sound rumbled from deep within his chest. It wasn't a bark. It was a low, guttural growl that resonated through the floorboards, a primal warning that bypassed the ears and went straight to the spine. Maya, drawn by the strange light, began to walk toward the huge picture window that overlooked their front lawn. Brutus was there in 2 silent, powerful strides. He didn't snarl or snap. His action was one of pure, calculated interception. He placed his body squarely in her path, a living wall of muscle and bone. When she tried to step around him, he moved with her, blocking her way. "Brutus, what is it?" "Move, boy," David said, his voice sharp with confusion and alarm. The dog ignored him. His amber eyes, usually so placid, now held a glint of fierce, unyielding intelligence. He let out a single concussive bark, a sound so deep and commanding it startled them both. Then he turned his head and nudged Sarah's hand forcefully with his wet nose. He looked at her, then at the basement door, then back at her. The message was unmistakable. He nudged David. He nudged Maya. He began to herd them, using his size not as a threat, but as a tool to steer his confused and frightened flock. His urgency was terrifying. As they stumbled toward the cellar stairs, David glanced back at the picture window. The leaves on the old oak tree outside were being sucked upward, dancing a frantic jig against a sky the color of a bruise. They scrambled down the rickety wooden steps, Sarah's heart hammering against her ribs. David pulled the heavy door shut, just as a low rumble became a deafening roar, like a freight train tearing through their living room. A fraction of a second later, an explosive crash from above sent a shower of dust and splinters down on them. The roaring passed, an eerie silence fell, broken only by the sound of dripping water and the faint wail of a distant siren. In the dusty gloom of the cellar, lit by a single bare bulb, Sarah saw her daughter. Maya was not crying. She was not rocking. As she was sitting on the cold concrete floor with her small hand buried deep in the thick fur of Brutus's neck. He had curled his massive body around her, his head resting on his paws, his amber eyes watching the door. He hadn't been unresponsive, he had been listening. He hadn't been stubborn, he had been steadfast. The dog everyone had thrown away, the one they called broken, had been watching over them all along, waiting for the one moment his silent, steady love would be needed to save them all. They called him a lost cause, a ticking time bomb of aggressive stillness. But his silence wasn't to emptiness, it was vigilance. The bond he shared with Maya wasn't one of words, but of a shared, quiet understanding that the noisy world could never comprehend. His stillness was simply the calm before he saved their lives. Stories like this are the heart of heroic dogs' tales, and we love sharing them with you. Now, we want to hear your thoughts. Faced with the shelter manager S.C.'s stark warnings, would you have trusted the expert's advice or your child's silent intuition?
Brutus stands as
Thank you for being part of our community, and we'll see you for the next story. We now know what Brutus is capable of, but the story of how he got those scars is just beginning.